Commander Veltar couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screens. His ship, the Starbound, had been exploring space for decades, but nothing had prepared him for this. The third planet, orbiting the yellow star, showed readings that made no sense. The gravity was twice as strong as what most life forms could handle. The air was full of oxygen, which would burn through alien lungs like acid. Lightning storms crackled across the surface with enough power to destroy entire fleets. "Commander, we're picking up radio signals from down there," said Science Officer Kethra. Her voice shook with excitement, and her tentacles wiggled nervously. "There are definitely intelligent beings on that planet." Veltar stared at her like she had grown a second head. "That's impossible. Our computers are telling us that planet is a death trap. Nothing could live there, let alone build a civilization." But the signals kept coming. Music, voices, strange patterns of communication. That clearly showed intelligence. The crew gathered around their instruments, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Down on Earth, things were perfectly normal for the humans living there. Marine Sergeant Rick Davis was in his backyard in Colorado, helping his sick daughter Lucy learn to ride her bike. The thin mountain air at 9,000 feet above sea level would kill most aliens in minutes. But Rick just took deep breaths and cheered as Lucy wobbled forward on two wheels. "You're doing great, kiddo," he called out, jogging beside her as she pedaled faster. "Just keep your balance." Thousands of miles away in Alaska, bush pilot Jake Anderson was loading supplies into his small plane. The temperature outside was 40 degrees below zero. Ice crystals formed in his breath, and the metal of his plane was so cold it would freeze alien skin on contact. But Jake just pulled on his thick gloves and started his engine like it was any other Tuesday. "Another delivery run to the remote villages," he muttered to himself, checking his fuel gauges. "These folks need their medicine and food, and a little cold weather isn't going to stop me." Up in space, the alien crew watched all of this through their powerful telescopes. They saw humans walking around in conditions that would instantly kill most galactic species. They saw children playing outside in what their computers labeled as extreme radiation zones. They watched as humans dove into vast bodies of water filled with massive predators, just for fun. "Commander," whispered Navigator Quinn, "look at this. They're actually enjoying themselves down there." The screens showed surfers riding massive waves in Hawaii. Professional athlete Maria Santos was catching a 20-foot wave like it was nothing special. The force of that much water would crush most alien bones, but Maria just smiled and carved through the wave with perfect balance. "This doesn't make sense," Veltar said, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly. "Our classification system rates that planet as Class 12. That's supposed to be theoretical. We've never found a Class 12 world that actually supported life." Science Officer Kethra pulled up more data. "Sir, their planet has massive storms that produce electromagnetic pulses. The surface is constantly bombarded with radiation from their star. The gravity is crushing. The atmospheric pressure changes could pop our eardrums. And yet they're thriving down there," Veltar finished. "They're not just surviving. They're building cities, creating art, raising families." "How is this possible?" The crew fell silent as they continued to observe. They watched construction workers building skyscrapers that reached toward the clouds. They saw doctors performing delicate surgeries with hands steady despite the crushing gravity. They observed teachers leading children through lessons while sitting in radiation levels that would cook alien brains. Commander Kethra said slowly, "I think we need to reconsider everything we know about what makes a world habitable. These beings aren't just adapted to their death world. They've mastered it." Dr. Lisa Chen floated 30 feet underwater off the California coast, completely calm as a massive great white shark glided past her. The creature was 15 feet long, with teeth that could slice through steel, but Lisa just adjusted her underwater. Cameron kept taking notes. She had been studying these apex predators for years, swimming alongside them like they were old friends. The shark turned and approached her again, curious about the strange visitor in its territory. Lisa stayed perfectly still, watching as the powerful predator investigated her diving gear with its nose. Any sudden movement could trigger an attack, but Lisa had done this hundreds of times. She gently touched the shark's flank as it passed, collecting a small tissue sample for her research. Above the surface, Coast Guard pilot Tom Williams was having his own adventure. 30-foot waves crashed around his rescue helicopter as he practiced emergency maneuvers. The ocean swells were so massive they could easily flip his aircraft, but Tom treated it like a routine training exercise. His co-pilot, Jenny Rodriguez, calmly called out coordinates while their helicopter was tossed around like a toy. Coming in for another practice rescue, Tom announced over the radio, fighting to keep his aircraft steady in the violent winds. Waves are looking pretty rough today, but nothing we can't handle. Up in space, the crew of the Starbound watched all of this in complete shock. Commander Veltar had seen many strange things in his travels across the galaxy, but nothing like this. These humans were deliberately putting themselves in situations that would kill most spacefaring species instantly. "I don't understand," said Science Officer Kethra, her tentacles quivering as she studied the readings. "That human is swimming with one of their planet's most dangerous predators. For fun. She's actually enjoying herself." The alien crew continued, observing, and what they saw next made them question everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. In a place called Miami Beach, hundreds of humans were lying on sand, letting their star's deadly radiation hit their skin directly. The aliens' instruments screamed warnings about dangerous UV levels, but the humans just relaxed and soaked it up. "Look at this," whispered Navigator Quinn, pointing at another screen. "The small humans are running around in that radiation like it's harmless." Children were building sandcastles, playing volleyball, and splashing in the ocean while being bombarded with enough solar radiation to cook most alien species. But they were laughing and having the time of their lives. Some of them were even eating frozen treats that their parents bought from colorful trucks. The real shock came when the aliens observed what humans did for entertainment. In a place called Las Vegas, people were voluntarily consuming liquids that the ship's computers identified as poison, ethyl alcohol, caffeine, and other toxic substances that would shut down alien nervous systems. But humans were drinking these toxins and then dancing, laughing, and socializing. "Commander," said Kethra, her voice barely a whisper, "they're consuming deadly neurotoxins for pleasure, and it's making them more social, not less." But perhaps the most amazing thing the aliens witnessed was in a city park. Police Officer Ray Thompson was walking through a crowded area with what appeared to be a tamed wolf. The creature was massive, with powerful jaws and sharp teeth, clearly descended from apex predators. But children were running up to pet it, and the beast was wagging its tail and licking their faces. "They've domesticated their predators," breathed Navigator Quinn. "They've turned killers into companions." The German shepherd named Max seemed to love the attention from the children. He sat patiently while a toddler grabbed his ears, and he gently licked the hand of an elderly woman who offered him treats. This scene was being repeated all over the planet. Humans lived alongside creatures that should have been their natural enemies. Meanwhile, in Montana, rancher Beth Murphy was doing something that made the alien crew's medical officer nearly faint. She was climbing onto the back of a wild horse, an animal that weighed over 1,000 pounds, and was actively trying to throw her off. The horse bucked and twisted with enough force to shatter alien bones, but Beth just held on tight and rode it out. "Easy there, Thunder," she called to the horse, staying balanced despite the violent movements. "We'll get along just fine once. You settle down." When the horse finally calmed down, Beth slid off its back with a big smile on her face. She had just survived impacts that would hospitalize most galactic citizens, and she was already looking forward to trying again tomorrow. The starbound crew sat in stunned silence, realizing they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. These humans didn't just survive on their death world, they had turned survival into an art form. The sun suddenly exploded with violent energy, sending a massive wave of deadly radiation racing through space. Commander Veltar watched his instruments in horror as the solar flare grew bigger and more dangerous by the second. The wave of energy was so powerful, it would fry every electronic system it touched and kill any living creature caught in its path. "Commander, we have a problem," Science Officer Kethra announced, her voice tight with worry. "That solar flare is heading straight for both our observation station and the human colony on Mars. We only have enough power to protect one location." Veltar felt his heart sink. His hidden observation post orbiting Mars had been studying the humans for weeks, but now they faced an impossible choice. They could save themselves, or they could save the human settlement below. There wasn't enough energy to shield both locations from the incoming radiation storm. The commander stared at the red planet below, where 300 human colonists were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that death was racing toward them at the speed of light. These were the same creatures they had watched thriving in impossible conditions on Earth. Now they were building a new home on another death world, turning the barren desert of Mars into a place where families could live and work. "Sir, we have to make a decision," Navigator Quinn said quietly. "The flare will hit us in less than 2 hours." Veltar made the hardest choice of his long career. He opened a communication channel to the Mars colony, knowing that revealing their presence would change everything. For all he knew, the humans might panic and attack them, or worse. "Mars colony, this is Commander Veltar of the research vessel Starbound," he transmitted, his voice shaking slightly. "We are a peaceful exploration ship, and we need to warn you about an incoming solar flare that will destroy both our stations, unless we work together." The response came back almost immediately, but it wasn't what any of the alien crew expected. "Commander Veltar, this is Colony Administrator Ryan Campbell. Thank you for the warning. How can we help?" The alien crew looked at each other in amazement. No panic, no demands for explanations, no threats or accusations. Just a simple offer to help from people who had just learned they weren't alone in the universe. Within minutes, the Mars colony was buzzing with activity. Mining engineer Beth Torres was already pulling up technical specifications and power grid layouts. Comparing them with the alien ship's energy requirements, she worked side by side with the Starbound's engineering team, treating the tentacled creatures like old friends instead of mysterious invaders. "If we reroute power from our solar collectors and combine it with your ship's generators, we might have enough energy to create a protective field around both locations," Beth explained over the radio, her voice calm and professional. Colony Medical Officer Dr. Kevin Park was preparing emergency supplies without even being asked. He had never seen an alien before, but he was already studying their biological data and preparing treatments for radiation exposure. "I'm not sure how your species reacts to radiation poisoning, but I'm mixing up everything we have, just in case," he told the alien medical team. Maintenance Chief Carlos Rivera was the real hero of the day. He suited up and went outside the colony to manually connect power cables between the human generators and the alien ship's systems. The work was dangerous and had to be done perfectly, but Carlos treated it like any other repair job. "Just tell me which cables go where," he said cheerfully as he floated in the thin Martian atmosphere, working with alien technicians who had 6 arms instead of 2. "We'll get this figured out." Communications Officer Diana Walsh worked around the clock to coordinate between the two teams. She learned basic alien language phrases in minutes and helped translate technical terms that had no equivalent between species. Her calm voice kept everyone organized as the deadly radiation wave got closer and closer. The most amazing thing was how naturally the humans accepted their new alien neighbors. Children in the colony pressed their faces against windows to wave at the alien engineers. Families offered to share their meals with the visitors. Nobody seemed afraid or suspicious. They just saw neighbors in trouble and wanted to help. As the solar flare finally hit, both the human colony and the alien observation station were protected by a combined energy shield that neither group could have created alone. The deadly radiation washed over them harmlessly, and when it was over, both facilities were still intact. Commander Veltar couldn't believe what had just happened. In all his years of exploring the galaxy, he had never seen anything like it. Most species would have demanded explanations, negotiations, or proof of peaceful intentions before offering help. But these humans had immediately put aside their own safety to help complete strangers from another world. "Commander," said Science Officer Kiatra, "I think we need to completely revise our understanding of what makes a species truly advanced." The massive solar flare had done more damage than anyone realized. As the deadly radiation swept through space, it knocked a huge asteroid out of its normal path and sent it spinning directly toward Earth. The space rock was over 2 miles wide, big enough to wipe out all life on the planet when it hit. Commander Veltar received the terrible news first. His ship's computers calculated the asteroid's new trajectory and showed him the horrifying truth. In less than 72 hours, the rock would slam into Earth with the force of 1,000,000 nuclear bombs. The impact would create a crater, hundreds of miles wide, and throw so much dust into the atmosphere that the sun would be blocked out for years. "We have to warn them," Veltar said immediately. "And we need to call for evacuation ships from the Confederation. Maybe we can save some of them." Down on Earth, NASA Director Robert Chen was having the worst day of his career. The warning from the alien ship had confirmed what his own telescopes were showing him. A mountain-sized piece of space rock was going to end human civilization, and there was almost nothing they could do about it. "How long until the Confederation ships arrive?" he asked Commander Veltar during their emergency communication. 4 days, maybe 5, came the reply. "We're sending out distress calls to every ship in the sector, but even our fastest vessels need time to reach you?" Robert looked at the numbers again. The asteroid would hit in 3 days. The rescue ships would arrive too late to save anyone. "Thank you for trying," Robert said calmly. "But we're not giving up on our home. We're going to stop that thing." Space Force Commander Lisa Rodriguez was already working on a plan that made the aliens' computers flash warning messages. She wanted to load every nuclear weapon on Earth onto rockets and fire them directly at the asteroid. Then human pilots would fly alongside the missiles and manually detonate them inside the space rock's core. "The plan is completely insane," she admitted during a video conference with world leaders. "We're talking about sending people on one-way trips to blow themselves up, along with that asteroid. But it's the only chance we have." The aliens watched in horror as humans began volunteering for what were essentially suicide missions. Pilot Captain Jake Wilson was the first to sign up, followed by nuclear engineer Patricia Moore and demolitions expert Tony Garcia. Within hours, dozens of the Earth's best pilots and engineers had volunteered to give their lives to save their planet. "I don't understand," Science Officer Kethra whispered as she watched the preparations. "They could evacuate the most important people and rebuild their civilization elsewhere. Why are they choosing to die instead?" Commander Veltar didn't have an answer. In all his years of space exploration, he had never encountered a species that would sacrifice themselves for their homeworld, rather than simply find a new one. The first wave of missiles launched exactly 48 hours before impact. Captain Jake Wilson piloted his small ship alongside a cluster of nuclear warheads, staying close enough to manually override the detonation systems if the remote controls failed. His voice stayed calm and steady as he radioed back to Earth. "This is Eagle 1, approaching the target. Everything looks good up here. The warheads are armed and ready." "Copy that, Eagle 1. replied Mission Controller Brian Foster from Houston. Your family sends their love, Jake. Your kids are watching, and they're proud of their dad. Jake's voice cracked just slightly as he responded. Tell them I love them too, and tell them this is for their future. The first explosion lit up space like a new star as Jake manually triggered the nuclear devices deep inside the asteroid. His ship disappeared in the brilliant flash, but the massive rock barely seemed damaged. We need more firepower, Commander, Rodriguez announced. Send in the second wave. Engineer Rita Santos and pilot David Chang flew the next mission together, their ship loaded with mining charges and experimental explosives. They dove their small craft directly into the crater that Jake's sacrifice had created, going deeper into the asteroid's core before triggering their payload. Second wave, detonating now, Rita radioed calmly. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Another brilliant explosion followed, and this time chunks of the asteroid began breaking away. But the main mass was still on course for Earth. The third and final wave consisted of 5 ships carrying the most powerful nuclear weapons humanity had ever built. The pilots flew in perfect formation, their voices steady as they approached the damaged asteroid. This is it, folks, called out Team Leader Mike Torres. Whatever happens next, we've given everything we had. Earth is counting on us. The final explosion was so bright that it temporarily blinded the alien observation equipment. When the light faded, the massive asteroid was gone, broken into thousands of harmless pieces that would burn up in Earth's atmosphere, or miss the planet entirely. The aliens sat in stunned silence as they watched the celebration broadcasts from Earth. Humans were dancing in the streets, crying with relief, and honoring the heroes who had given their lives to save everyone else. Commander. Veltar finally found his voice. They didn't just survive, he said quietly. They chose to fight death itself, rather than abandon their home. What kind of species does that? The galaxy was about to find out. The story of what humans had done spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within weeks, every space station, colony, and homeworld in the Confederation had heard about the Deathworlders who lived on an impossible planet and refused to give up when death itself came knocking. Commander. Veltar's report became the most downloaded document in galactic history. Species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly fascinated by these strange creatures who turned deadly planets into homes and fought asteroids with nuclear weapons. The report was translated into over 3,000 languages and broadcast on news networks across dozens of star systems. Some aliens reacted with pure terror. The Zephyrian Council immediately voted to increase their military spending, convinced that any species crazy enough to live on a death world must be planning to conquer the galaxy. They couldn't understand that humans weren't violent by nature. They were just incredibly determined when protecting what they loved. Other species were amazed and inspired. The peaceful crystalline collective, who had been struggling with a mining disaster on their homeworld for decades, suddenly had new hope. If humans could thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens, maybe they could help solve problems that seemed impossible. The most interesting reaction came from the ancient ethereal conclave, beings so old and wise that they rarely spoke to younger species. For the first time in centuries, they requested a formal meeting with the Confederation Council to discuss these remarkable humans. In all our eons of existence, announced Elder Luminara during the emergency session, we have never encountered a species that combines such adaptability with such selfless courage. These humans may represent an evolution in consciousness that we must study. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity was dealing with the strangest problem they had ever faced, suddenly becoming famous across the entire galaxy. President Janet Rodriguez found herself fielding communication requests from alien governments she had never heard of. Scientists like Dr. Rebecca Chen were being invited to speak at interstellar conferences about survival techniques and planetary adaptation. The biggest challenge was choosing who would represent humanity in official first contact with the Galactic Confederation. After months of debate and careful selection, Ambassador Diana Hayes was chosen to lead Earth's first diplomatic mission to the stars. She was a career diplomat who had spent years working with the United Nations, but nothing had prepared her for negotiating with tentacled creatures from distant worlds. "Remember," President Rodriguez told her during the final briefing, "you're not just representing America or Earth, you're representing the human spirit. Show them who we really are." Diana's team included some of Earth's most remarkable people. Dr. Michael Torres, a brilliant scientist who had helped design the asteroid-destroying mission, would serve as the scientific advisor. General Lisa Park, who had coordinated the defense of Earth, would handle any military questions. Engineer Carlos Wong, who had worked alongside the alien technicians during the solar flare crisis, would demonstrate human technical cooperation. The journey to the Confederation capital took 3 weeks aboard an alien transport ship. Diana spent the time learning about galactic politics and studying the hundreds of different species she would soon meet. What surprised her most was how many aliens were genuinely excited to meet humans, not afraid of them. When their ship finally arrived at Confederation Station, Diana got her first look at the heart of galactic civilization. The massive space station was bigger than most cities, with docking bays designed for creatures that swam through liquid methane and others that existed as pure energy. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The day of the first official meeting, Diana walked into the Confederation chambers wearing a simple blue suit that had been carefully chosen to look professional but not threatening. Behind her walked her team, representing the best of what humanity had to offer. The chamber fell completely silent as they entered. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds stopped their conversations and turned to stare at the Deathworlders, who had become legendary across the galaxy. Some had multiple eyes that blinked in complex patterns. Others communicated through color changes in their skin. A few existed as floating clouds of gas that somehow maintained consciousness. Diana took her assigned seat at the center of the chamber and looked around at the incredible diversity of life that surrounded her. These beings had been exploring space for millions of years, building civilizations and solving problems that humans were just beginning to understand, and yet they were all looking to humanity for something new. "Honored delegates," Diana began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "we come here not as conquerors or saviors, but as neighbors. We've learned that the universe is a dangerous place, but we've also learned that working together makes us all stronger." She paused and smiled, thinking about Jake Wilson and Rita Santos and all the other heroes who had given their lives to save Earth. "My people have a saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. We'd like to share that toughness with all of you and learn from your wisdom in return." The chamber erupted in sounds that the translation systems couldn't quite handle. Cheers, musical tones, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical releases that all meant the same thing across dozens of species. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy was ready to see what impossible things they could accomplish together. For the first time in galactic history, species that had given up on unsolvable problems began to hope again. If humans could turn a death world into a paradise and fight off planet-killing asteroids, maybe there really were no impossible challenges. Just problems that hadn't met the right species yet. The age of humanity in space had officially begun.